Ladies and gentlemen, the President and Vice President of the United States.
How you doing? Fine. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated. I want to welcome all of you here to the White House. I want to especially acknowledge members of Congress who are here and who have worked so hard to pass this important legislation. Senator Orrin Hatch, Senator Howard Metzenbaum, Senator Mark Hatfield, Congressman Don Edwards, Congressman Gerald Nadler, Congressman Chuck Schumer, two special friends of mine, the chaplains of the respective houses of Congress, Dr. James Ford from the House of Representatives and Reverend Richard Halverson of the Senate, and to so many distinguished guests who are present. There are a lot of reasons to celebrate today's ceremony. And in fact, if you look at this audience and look at the letterhead of the coalition of groups supporting it, you'll see 68 good reasons. Groups that usually don't agree on very much, but groups that have come together to support religious freedom. You know that when you have the National Association of Evangelicals and the American Civil Liberties Union, the National Islamic Prison Foundation and B'nai B'rith, the Traditional Values Coalition and People for the American Way, we're doing something right here today. We're glad you're all here to be a part of it. I'm glad that that we're not the only two Baptists here in the crowd here today, too. I see a bunch. The fact is that the Religious Freedom Restoration Act is something that all Americans can support. 3 years ago, Oregon v. Smith diminished America's longstanding commitment to the free exercise of religion. Since then, there have been dozens of cases in which it's been applied, and the citizen has lost in almost every case. Those whose religion forbids autopsies have been subjected to mandatory autopsies. Those who want churches close to where they live have seen churches zoned out of residential areas. Those who want the freedom to design their churches have seen local governments dictate the configuration of their buildings. Well, today's bill restores freedom of religion. It restores a freedom called for by Thomas Paine when he wrote in Common Sense that it is the will of the Almighty that there should be diversity of religious opinions among us. We can and should take pride in the early expressions of religious freedom in America, like those of Paine, but we should also remember that this is a belief America has put into practice imperfectly. Even Paine was talking only about varieties of Christian expression, and there is a wonderfully passionate speech by Chief Red Jacket of the Seneca tribe when Christian missionaries sought to baptize his followers. "You say that you are right and we are lost," he said. "How do we know this to be true? We do not wish to destroy your religion. We only want to enjoy our own." Well, this is the view that we reaffirm today. We want to keep the government out of people's lives. We want Americans free to practice their religion, not as government sees fit, but as they see fit. There's a story about a group of ministers who visited Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War and reassured him that the North would win because God was on the Union side. "The question is," Lincoln said, "are we on God's side?" I don't presume to know what God's side is, but I'm proud that we can today gather to watch the signing by President Clinton of one of the most important steps to reaffirm religious freedom in my lifetime. You know, one of the most famous students ever to attend University College at Oxford was the poet Percy Bysshe Shelley, and in 1811 he was expelled from Oxford for writing a pamphlet on what he called the necessity of atheism. Well, I'm proud to present this generation's most famous student at University College. His religious views are a little different than Shelley's, and he was also a better student than Shelley. And now to talk to you about why today's bill is such a great step forward, no matter what our religious views, it is a great pleasure and honor for me to present to you the President of the United States, Bill Clinton.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President, for those fine remarks, and to the members of Congress, the chaplains of the House and the Senate, and to all of you who work so hard to help this day become a reality. Let me especially thank the Coalition for the Free Exercise of Religion for the central role they played in drafting this legislation and working so hard for its passage. It is interesting to note, as the Vice President said, what a broad coalition of Americans came together to make this bill a reality. Interesting to note that that coalition produced a 97-3 vote in the United States Senate, and a bill that had such broad support it was adopted on a voice vote in the House. I'm told that as many of the people in the coalition worked together across ideological and religious lines, some new friendships were formed and some new trust was established, which shows, I suppose, that the power of God is such that even in the legislative process, miracles can happen. We all have a shared desire here to protect perhaps the most precious of all American liberties, religious freedom. Usually the signing of legislation by a president is a ministerial act, often a quiet ending to a turbulent legislative process. Today, this event assumes a more majestic quality because of our ability together to affirm the historic role that people of faith have played in the history of this country, and the constitutional protections those who profess and express their faith have always demanded and cherished. The power to reverse legislation by legislation, a decision of the United States Supreme Court, is a power that is rightly, hesitantly, and infrequently exercised by the United States Congress. But this is an issue in which that extraordinary measure was clearly called for. As the Vice President said, this act reverses the Supreme Court's decision, Employment Division against Smith, and reestablishes a standard that better protects all Americans of all faiths in the exercise of their religion, in a way that I am convinced is far more consistent with the intent of the founders of this nation than the Supreme Court decision. More than 50 cases have been decided against individuals making religious claims against government action since that decision was handed down. This act will help to reverse that trend by honoring the principle that our laws and institutions should not impede or hinder, but rather should protect and preserve fundamental religious liberties. The free exercise of religion has been called the first freedom, that which originally sparked the development of the full range of the Bill of Rights. Our founders cared a lot about religion, and one of the reasons they worked so hard to get the First Amendment into the Bill of Rights at the head of the class is that they well understood what could happen to this country, how both religion and government could be perverted if there were not some space created and some protection provided. They knew that religion helps to give our people a character without which a democracy cannot survive. They knew that there needed to be a space of freedom between government and people of faith that otherwise government might usurp. They have seen now, all of us, that religion and religious institutions have brought forth faith and discipline, community and responsibility over 2 centuries for ourselves, and enabled us to live together in ways that I believe would not have been possible. We are, after all, the oldest democracy now in history, and probably the most truly multi-ethnic society on the face of the earth. And I am convinced that neither one of those things would be true today had it not been for the importance of the First Amendment and the fact that we have kept faith with it for 200 years. Our citizens What this law basically says is that the government should be held to a very high level of proof before it interferes with someone's free exercise of religion. This judgment is shared by the people of the United States as well as by the Congress. We believe strongly that we can never be too vigilant in this work. Let me make one other comment, if I might, before I close and sit down and sign this bill. There is a great debate now abroad in the land which finds itself injected into several political races about the extent to which people of faith can seek to do God's will as political actors. I would like to come down on the side of encouraging everybody to act on what they believe is the right thing to do. There are many people in this country who strenuously disagree with me on what they believe are the strongest grounds of their faith. I encourage them to speak out. I encourage all Americans to reach deep inside to try to determine what it is that drives their lives most deeply. As many of you know, I have been quite moved by Stephen Carter's book, The Culture of Disbelief. He makes a compelling case that today Americans of all political persuasions and all regions have created a climate in this country in which some people believe that they are embarrassed to say that they advocate a course of action simply because they believe it is the right thing to do, because they believe it is dictated by their faith, by what they discern to be, with their best efforts, the will of God. I submit to you today, my fellow Americans, that we can stand that kind of debate in this country. We are living in a country where the most central institution of our society, the family, has been under assault for 30 years. We are living in a country in which 160,000 school children don't go to school every day because they're afraid someone will shoot them or beat them up or knife them. We are living in a country now where gunshots are the single leading cause of death among teenage boys. We are living in a country where people can find themselves shot in the crossfire of teenagers who are often better armed than the police who are trying to protect other people from illegal conduct. It is high time we had an open and honest reaffirmation of the role of American citizens of faith, not so that we can agree, but so that we can argue and discourse and seek the truth and seek to heal this troubled land. So today I ask you to also think of that. We are a people of faith. We have been so secure in that faith that we have enshrined in our Constitution protection for people who profess no faith. And good for us for doing so. That is what the First Amendment is all about. But let us never believe that the freedom of religion imposes on any of us some responsibility to run from our convictions. Let us instead respect one another's faiths, fight to the death to preserve the right of every American to practice whatever convictions he or she has, but bring our values back to the table of American discourse to heal our troubled land. Thank you very much.
Could the members of Congress come up?
Please be seated. Please be seated. Please be seated.